Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Shalom, shalom, shalom. This is your Captain Inaw from the Light of Zion Treasure Coast. And we're here to bring you another topic, a very important topic that all Israel need to know. All you so-called blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, Seminole Indians, those that descend from Negro and Indian descent. This class is called The Gift and the Curse. We're going to go into the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, right? Why is it called the gift and the curse? Because we're going to go into the blessings and the curses, right? The Most High commanded the 12 tribes of Israel to keep the commandments, right? And if we disobey, we will suffer the consequences, right? So the gift of the commandments were the blessings, right? As we're going to read from verse 1 to verse 15, if we keep his commandments, we will obtain blessings. That is the gift. Now, from verses 16 to 68 is the curses, right? And if we disobey and do not keep his commandments, we will receive the consequences of our disobedience, which is the curses. All right. Why this is important? As a lot of us that embark upon this journey, what we call the truth, right? A lot of our elders, a lot of our young elders, a lot of our young brothers and sisters, this is the chapter, this is the information that they heard on the corners in the streets, on the street corners, on YouTube, on social media, right? This is the information that hooked them and woke them up and opened their eyes to the truth, right? Not everyone, but the majority of our people, when you speak to them or when you read this, they start analyzing this information and start realizing that we've been lied to for the past 400 to 500, 600 years, right? So this information is very important, right? So we're gonna go right into it. We're gonna dive right into it. We're gonna get some information. We're gonna pull up some slides, and we're gonna apply the curses to this present time, right? We're still going to apply it to the old, history from the past, right? But we need to apply it to this time for this generation, for our young brothers and sisters out here that live in this society that constantly trying to fill their minds with false information, false identity, right? False nationality, right? We need to show them this information. As the scriptures say, the Jews seek for a sign, right? These curses will be a sign and a wonder to our generation forever, right? So we need to explain how these curses apply in this present time, right? So with that being said, we're going to dive right into it. Once again, this is the Light of Zion Treasure Coast. I'm your Captain Inaw. We're going to go right into it. Let's get the book of Colossians chapter 3, verse 17. This is the book of Colossians chapter 3, verse 17. And whatsoever ye do in word or deed, do all by Hashem HaMashiach Yahushai, giving thanks to the Father, to Yahweh, and the Father by him. Us here in the Light of Zion, this is our go-to scripture whenever we open up a topic, open up class, open up camp in the streets, because everything that we do, everything that we say, everything that we think has to be according to the Most High's word or deeds, right? The Most High's will, right? We are a living representation of our Father in heaven and a Mashiach Yahushai, who this world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. So we need to represent, right? We need to represent and be that living light, be that influence and example of light to those that are in darkness. All right. So we're going to dive right into the scriptures. We're going to get Deuteronomy. We're going to get Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 1. We're going to go into the blessings. This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 1. And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Most High Yahweh thy power, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command thee this day, that the Most High Yahweh thy power will set thee high above all nations. Right? So we open up with the blessings. And the first blessing is, not the first blessing, but the results of keeping the commandments is that the Most High will set us high above all nations of the earth. Keep that in mind. Make a mental note about that, right? Because a lot of people in this society try to push equality, right? The Most High always made a difference, right? He always created division amongst the nations. He always set us apart from all the other nations. We're a holy people, as the scriptures say in Deuteronomy 7 and 6, right? We're a special people above all people, right? But the only way to become that, you must observe and do all his commandments. Let's read on. Verse 2, and all these blessings shall come on thee and overtake thee, if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the Most High Yahweh thy power. Right? So we're going to read through this. We're going to read the blessings, which I call the gift of keeping the commandments. Right? These are the benefits of keeping the Most High's commandments, statutes, and judgments. Right? Verse 3, blessed shalt thou be in the city, and blessed shalt thou be in the fields. Blessed shall be the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy ground, and the fruit of thy cattle, the increase of thy kind, and the flocks of thy sheep. Right? So we're going to be blessed in the cities. We're going to be blessed in the fields. Right? The fruit of our body will be blessed. The fruit of our ground will be blessed. Right? Our resources, our families, right? We will be continuously fruitful, right? As the scriptures say, as the stars of heaven and as the sand of sea, right? Our cattle, our food, our fruits will be blessed, right? Verse 5, blessed shall be thy basket in thy store, right? You know, that means everything that we keep in the storehouses, right? All the fruits and all the crops and all the herbs that we harvest and bring in, it will be blessed, right? Our storehouses will be full abundantly, right? Verse 6, blessed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and blessed shalt thou be when thou goest out. Anywhere where the so-called Blacks, Latino, Native American, Seminole Indians reside, we will be blessed. We will be a blessed nation. Anywhere that we go, that city, that land, that place will be blessed, right? Because of our presence. Verse 7, the Lord shall cause thy enemies that rise up against thee to be smitten before thy face. They shall come out against thee one way and flee before thee 7 ways, right? So when our enemies rise up against us, right, they will be shut down. They will be destroyed right before our face, right? They're going to be fleeing from us. They're going to be fleeing 7 ways before us, right? Why? Because the Most High Yahweh, the power of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is amongst us, in the midst of us. Because when we keep the law, statutes, and commandments, it makes us holy. It makes us sanctified. And as a nation, We must be clean for the Most High Yahweh to be in the midst of us. All right, let's read on. Keep in mind, we're reading the blessings, right? Verse 8. The Lord shall command a blessing upon thee in thy storehouses, and in all that thou settest thy hand unto. And he shall bless thee in the land which the Most High Yahweh thy power giveth thee. So like we mentioned before, anywhere that we go, that land will be blessed because the Most High gave it to us, right? The Most High gave it to us, and because we are his people, a special people, that land will be blessed. And anything that we set our hands onto will be prosperous, right? Will multiply, will become successful. Our storehouses will receive blessings, right? Let's read on. The Lord shall establish thee an holy people unto himself, as he has sworn unto thee, if thou shalt keep the commandments of the Most High Yahweh thy power and walk in his ways, right? So the Most High will establish us to be an holy people, right? Let's prove what being holy means, right? Let's get that real quick. We're going to go to the book of Romans, chapter 7 and verse 12. Right? So this is the book of Romans, chapter 7, verse 12. Wherefore the law is holy, and the commandment holy, and just, and good. Right? This is how we become holy, right? Because the very thing that we keep, observe, and do makes us holy. The law, the statutes, the commandments. Let's go back. Let's go back to Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 10. And all the people of the earth shall see that thou art called by the name of the Most High, by the name Yahweh, right? And they shall be afraid of thee. Why would they be afraid of us? Because they would know that we are the Most High Yahweh, the Most High Yahweh's people, right? The power that redeemed his people from the hand of the Egyptians through Moses and Aaron, by using Moses and Aaron, right? The power that poured upon the Egyptians the 10 plagues. The power that destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. The power that showed mercy unto Noah and his children, but wiped out the rest of the earth. This very same power, we are his people, right? And because of that reputation, the people will be so afraid, right? The people of the earth, the other nations. Let's read. And the Lord shall make thee plenteous in goods, in the fruit of thy body, in the fruit of thy cattle, and in the fruit of thy ground, in the land which the Most High Yahweh swear unto thy fathers to give thee. Right? You got to remember right now, at this current time, when we're reading Deuteronomy 28, we're about to go into the land of Canaan, right? The land that floweth with milk and honey, right? This land was promised to us since the time of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? The Most High promise. So whenever the scriptures say the what I've sworn unto thy fathers, he's talking about that promise he made to Abraham and to Isaac, right? And unto Jacob, but specifically Abraham, right? He made a promise to us, to Abraham, to give us the land that floweth with milk and honey. So we're about to go into that land and take it, right? From the Canaanites and all the other tribes of Canaan, right? The Hittites, the Girgashites, the Hivites, and all the other Canaanites, right? That descend from Ham, right? Let's read on. Verse 12, the Lord shall open unto thee his good treasure, the heaven to give the rain unto thy land in his season, and to bless all the work of thy hand. And thou shalt lend unto many nations, and thou shalt not borrow. You hear that? The Most High will open unto us his good treasure. Anything that comes from the Most High is good, right? The Most High will make it rain upon our land in due season. What does this all mean? That as you read the blessings, anything that the Most High give us will be prosperous, right? It will be blessed. It will be plenteous, abundantly plenteous, right? We will be that bank, right? We will be the people with the structure and the foundation to provide for the rest of the world, right? You need to understand that this is when you keep the law, statutes, and commandments, right? When the Most High's kingdom is established and the 144,000 is governing the world, the kingdom, the rest of the nations have to go through us. We will be that bank. We will be that those all those companies that provide food, right? Water, right? If they need a loan, right, to build something, they got to go through us, right? They got to fill the application that we give them, right? And see if they qualify for the money that we're going to lend them, right? That's the gift. Let's read on. And the Lord shall make thee the head and not the tail, and thou shalt be above only. Let me read that again. And the Lord shall make thee the head and not the tail, and thou shalt be above only, and thou shalt not be beneath, if thou hearken unto the commandments of the Lord thy God, which I command thee this day to observe and to do them. You understand that? The Most High, this world, the so-called Blacks, Latino, Native American, Seminole Indians that descend from Negro and Indian descent have been fighting for equal rights for so long. What does that have? What has that done for our people? Those that believe in the Bible, those that believe that there's a power in heaven. I got to say that because there's people that don't believe in the Bible and don't believe in God, right? If you believe the words that are coming in this Bible, the Most High does not deal with equal rights. He deals with the nation of Israel, the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 sons of Jacob, right? And if we keep the law, statutes, and commandments, we will be above only. We will never be beneath. We will never be the tail. You understand that? That hierarchy, that pyramid, we're the ones that are going to be on top of that. We're never going to be at the bottom of that pyramid, the bottom of that chain. We will be the hierarchy. You understand? But we need to keep the law, the statutes, and the commandments. Right? Let's read on. Verse 14. And thou shalt not go aside from any of the words which I command thee this day, to the right hand or to the left, to go after other gods to serve them. Right? So we can't go astray from the Most High's words. Right? We can't pick and choose what commandment to keep. Right? We can't add on to the Most High's commandments, right? And give a different interpretation of it, right? It's the Most High. When you read it, this portion, matter of fact, I'll go to it. Let me go to it. I believe it was in chapter 27. Yeah, right here, right? So the 12 tribes of Israel are in Mount Ebal with Moses, right? And you have 6 men on one side and the other 6 on the other side, the 12 sons, right? And not including Levi right now. This is when Dan was present, right? Six of the men are given the blessings, and the other 6 are shouting out the curses, right? So before we got to that point, Moses instructed a few men to build up an altar, right? To gather up stones and to write the words of the words of this law on those stones, right? So when we read down, it was, I'm gonna find it for you. Give me 1 second. So on verse 3 in Deuteronomy 27, verse 3, and thou shalt write upon them all the words of this. Well, I'll read from verse 2. And it shall be on the day when ye shall pass over Jordan unto the land which the Most High Yahweh thy power giveth thee, that thou shalt set thee up great stones and plaster them with plaster. And thou shalt write upon them all the words of this law. When thou art passed over, that thou mayest go in unto the land which the Most High Yahweh thy power giveth thee. Right? So this is when we're in the land of Canaan. The Most High wants us to do this. Set up the great stones and write the words of this law on them right away. Right? And where is it? Okay, boom, 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 boom. Isn't it on here? Give me 1 second, Israel. Okay, right here. I'm sorry. I'll keep reading. Verse 4. Therefore it shall be when ye be gone over Jordan that ye shall set up these stones which I command you this day in Mount Ebal, and thou shalt plaster them with plaster. And there shalt thou build an altar unto the Most High Yahweh thy power, an altar of stones. Thou shalt not lift up any iron tune upon them. So these stones that we're going to pick up, we're not going to use any tools to I forgot what's the word they use for that type of work. When you creating sculptures, the Most High said, just pick up these stones and put them together. You don't need no tools, right? Thou shalt build the altar of the Lord thy God of whole stones. So meaning, these stones that we picking up, we're not even breaking them down to fit each other. Like how we grab bricks and or we grab concrete blocks and they're all shaped perfectly and we put them upon each other and put plaster. In this scenario, in this case, the Most High just wants us to grab whole stones. We're not even doing anything to these stones, right? And thou shalt offer burnt offerings thereon unto the Lord thy God, right? And thou shalt offer peace offerings and shalt eat there and rejoice before the Most High Yahweh thy power. Right here, this is it. And thou shalt write upon the stones all the words of this law very plainly. You understand that? Very plainly. So the Most High's words, the Most High's law will be written on these stones very plainly, so we don't go aside from any of the words which he command us to do. Right? The commandments will be plainly, right, for us to understand and keep them, right? So we can reference the scriptures, right? That's why it says commandment number 1, commandment number 2, right? The Most High will make us understand his commandments and keep them, right? He's not going to make it complicated for you to keep the commandments. You understand that? Right? So that's why it was instructed for us to write the laws, the words of this law on the stones plainly. That when we read them, we don't be like, we don't have no excuses. It wipes out any excuse, thou shalt not steal. You know what I'm saying? Right away, you understand, okay, I can't steal, right? Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Thou shalt not serve other gods. That's writing the Most High's words, law plainly for us to understand them so we don't fulfill verse 14. I'll read it again. Deuteronomy 28, verse 14. And thou shalt not go aside from any of the words which I command thee this day, to the right hand or to the left, to go after other gods to serve them. All right. So those from verses 1 through 13 was the blessings, the gift of keeping the commandments, right? When we observe and do them, right? Now, let's go into the consequences. Let's go into the results of disobedience, of not keeping the law, statutes, and commandments. Verse 15. And it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe, to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Right? So now, if we don't keep the law, statutes, and commandments, right? If we don't observe to do them, then the consequences are the curses, right? And these curses will come upon us and overtake us, right? Let's read on. Verse 16, cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field. What does that mean? Let's get a few examples, Israel. You know, they say a picture gives us 1,000 words. Let's go into some pictures. All right, Israel. So, cursed shall thou be in the city, right? So, in this present time, right, how are the so-called Black, Latino, Native American, some of the Indians that descend from Negro Indian descent cursed as a nation, right? Not just in one area here, but as a nation throughout the world? How will we curse in the city, right? In the background of this slide, I have a picture of Skid Row in California, in Los Angeles, right? They call it Skid Row, right? And all our people live homeless on these streets, right? And the government, they allow them to set up tents like this. Why? Because it will keep our people in this condition, right? They pour the drugs in the streets, you know. They give us religion because they want us to stay in this condition, right? Cursed shall thou be in the city. What are some of those curses, right? In this present time, you know, Salakia, the amount of killings by the police, the wrongful killings, right, of the so-called blacks in New York, in Baltimore, in Chicago, in LA, and throughout the world, in Florida, right? We have many examples because we constantly see them on the news, right? It's constantly brought to our attention the unjust, how can I say it? The wrongful death, let me say that, right? Of our so-called black brothers, right? You know, those that are labeled as African Americans, Jamaicans, Haitians, West Indians, those in the Caribbean, right? We got examples of George Floyd, right? This is how the so-called blacks, you know, so-called African Americans, Haitians, Jamaicans, West Indians, right? Panamanians, right? These are examples of how they are cursed in the city. You can see it throughout the world, right? Not just here in America, but throughout the world, right? The constant protest of to stop killing black people, right? We constantly fighting, you know, screaming no justice, no peace, right? We create these movements called Black Lives Matter, Black Panthers, right? Marcus Garvey tried to start a lineup, right? A movement, right? All these things constantly happen throughout generations and generations, right? And we really can't find an answer why. You know, ask yourself, why does this keep happening? Right? Why does this keep happening? And it keeps happening on a higher level every year, right? What about all the murders that haven't been caught on video or on tape, right? That we're not privy to, right? This is how we're cursed in the city, right? You know, this is how we're cursed in the city. This is how you apply the curses to the so-called blacks, African Americans, right? West Indians, Haitians, right? And how do we apply it to our so-called Hispanic brothers? The same way, right? We have here an article titled Murders Rose Last Year. Black and Hispanic neighborhoods were hit the hardest. Family members of Magali Alberto, who was shot and killed at a traffic light at a press conference held by the Los Angeles Police Department, right? The black on black crimes, the Hispanic on Hispanic crimes, Latino on Latino crimes, right? The indigenous, Native American on Native American crimes. This is how we're cursed in the city, right? We killing each other constantly, right? The gang violence, right? Selling drugs to each other, prostitution, right? Molestation, right? Taking advantage of our children, right? This is what's happening in what they call the inner cities, right? In the ghettos and the slums, where they label us the minorities, right? We're cursed in the city, right? Here, a so-called Hispanic Latino brother was shot down by a police officer, right? The article reads, "It's long past time we recognize all the Latinos killed at the hands of the police," right? This young brother, Andres Gudardo, right, was killed by the sheriff, by a police officer, right? But they don't show these things on the same level as they show the injustice that happened to the so-called blacks. Why? They don't want you to know. They don't want the Latinos, Hispanics, Native Americans, Native Indians, Seminole Indians to know that they're experiencing the same conditions that the so-called blacks experience, right? We have here a young brother named Jose Antonio, who was only 16-year-old, killed by the U.S. Border Patrol. I know we're aware of all the things that are going on the border, right? With our northern tribe brothers, with our so-called Hispanic brothers, specifically our South Americans and Mexican brothers, right? This is how we're cursed in the city, right? Another example of that is an injustice that happened to a young Hispanic brother named Adam Toledo, right? This is an article by Roberto Rodriguez from the Raza Database Projects from the Raza Database, right? Salakia. He is a Raza Database Projects Director, right? And this article comes from Accessos Latino, right? By Roberto Rodriguez, right? And it reads, "The numbers of Latinos and African Americans killed from police action since 2000 are somewhat similar. The difference is that Latinos are rarely mentioned when discussing violent police treatment." Why is that? Ask yourself that. How come they make us well aware of all the injustice, all the slavery, all the bad treatment that the so-called blacks, African Americans, quote unquote dark-skinned people go through, and they don't really show on a certain level what happens to our indigenous brothers and sisters. They do not want you to know that you're suffering the same curses, right? They do not want you to know that the so-called black man and the so-called Latino man is suffering the same curses, right? The scriptures say that we were going to be oppressed together, right? The scriptures say that. So the same thing that's happening to the so-called black man is happening to the so-called Hispanic man. But they don't want you to know that, because once we realize that we're going through the same condition, man, we must be family. We need to rise up and take down the man together, right? That's the mentality. That's why if you notice in California, they had that black and brown movement, right? The black and brown unity, right? But what happened? They shut that thing right. Once they noticed that we cannot have the Latinos, the so-called black and Latinos gathering together, right? They started strategizing and coming up with cunning ways to divide us, right? Set up gangs, set up these cities where the so-called Hispanics predominantly live and the so-called blacks predominantly live. We still live in the ghettos and the slums. We still live in the hoods, right? We still going under the same, we're still experiencing the same lack of resources, food deserts, bad food, right? But they make it seem like we're different people, right? There's 12 tribes. Remember that, Israel. There's 12 sons. There's different tribes, but we come from one nation, right? Like the so-called white man comes from the mountains of Seir, right? The Caucasians, they descend from Edom, but there's many tribes, right? You got the Amalekites, you got the Edomites. I mean, not the Edomites. You got the Amalekites. Let me break it down to a more present time. You got the Greeks, the Romans, the Russians, the French, right? The Spaniards, right? All these come from the same nation. They're just different tribes, right? The same thing with the Hamites, the same thing with the so-called Africans, the Canaanites, different tribes, same nation, right? So just because you're a Latino and just because you're a so-called black man, African American man, in our minds, we think that we're different people, but just look around you. Look at what you're going through. We're going through the similar conditions, right? Let's see what the scriptures say about us being oppressed, right? In the book of Jeremiah, chapter 50, verse 33. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the children of Israel, right, and the children of Judah were oppressed together, and all that took them captives held them fast. They refused to let them go. The children of Israel are the northern tribes, right? The northern kingdom, right? The 10 tribes, right? And the children of Judah is Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, right? We were oppressed together, and we still being oppressed together, right? Let's move on. Let's go back to the slides. What's the next precept in that same scripture, in that same verse? So Deuteronomy 28, verse 16. Cursed shall thou be in the city, and cursed shall thou be in the fields. How are we cursed in the fields? Right? We have one prime example, right? It's slavery, right? Our so-called black brothers and sisters, they were serving with rigor. They were oppressed in the cotton fields, working day and night, picking cotton to make the so-called white man rich. That's how we were cursed in the field, my brothers and sisters, right? Here are some pictures to display that, right? Here we got families working together picking cotton, right? It looks like they're having a cool, calm, collective day, but they were suffering, dying, dying from heat stroke, right? They will suffer things on their bodies, on their knees and their feet from being out there so long. Their hands were getting jacked up from all the picking, of picking the cotton, from all the thorns and thistles on the plants, right? Then you got the master. If you look on the picture on the left side, no, and the right side, you got the masters in the background overseeing, right? I don't know if it's the master, it's probably the overseer, right? Watching and making sure that they're working, right? We have some more pictures, right? This is how we were cursed in the field, my brothers and sisters, right? On the picture on the right, we have two sisters here hauling rice. This is all through slavery in the 1800s, 1600s, right? It also happened to our indigenous brothers and sisters as well. Those that call themselves Mayans, Incas, Aztecs, right? The indigenous Native Americans, Seminole Indians. We also suffer in the fields as well, right? But they don't teach us that history as much as they do what happened to our so-called black brothers and sisters, because they don't want you to know that you went through the same conditions. They do not want us to gather together. As it says in Zephaniah 2:1, the Most High want us to gather together, O nation not desire, right? And even in this present time, right? Also, the so-called Hispanic, Latinos, Native Americans, Seminole Indians, they out there working in the fields to this present day, getting underpaid, right? Having the children out there working all day in the heat, right? And they're getting pennies to the dollar, right? Suffering in these fields, trying to make a living for their families. We are cursed in the fields, right? Here's just some examples of us working in the fields, right? Next verse. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 17. Cursed shall be thy basket in thy store. So how do we apply this to the present time? What does this mean? What's the basket and what's the store? The basket is what we use in the fields to pick up our fruits and our crops and our corn, right? And the store is the storehouses that we bring all our goods. Remember, when we keep the commandments, the Most High say that blessed shall our basket and store be, right? So what is this? This is our resources, our businesses being cursed, right? The so-called Black, Latino, Native American, Seminole Indians, the majority of us, because we have some successful and prosperous brothers and sisters in this society, in this world, this present time, but the majority of us, we can't even keep a business open. We constantly open. We always have like a new business model, a new business idea, right? Oh, I'm selling shirts. I'm selling hats. Oh, I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Because every venture that we try to put our hands to is not prosperous as we want it to be. Why? Because we are a cursed people. We're not keeping the law, statutes, and commandments. So cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. We really saw the impact of that, of how serious it is during the pandemic, right? A lot of Black-owned businesses weren't able to stay open, right? Why? Because we don't have that support. We don't have that backup that these other corporations and businesses have. These white-owned businesses, right? These are pictures of, when you in the ghettos and the slums and you walking around these neighborhoods, the majority of our businesses are abandoned, closed down, right? Because we don't have that support. We don't have that financial backup, right? That other companies have. This leads to the U.S. racial wealth gap. It's not a coincidence that the so-called black man, right, Hispanic man, do not receive the same financial support as the other nations, specifically the so-called white man, Asian, like, Chinese, Indian. Look at all the businesses that are in our neighborhoods, right? You got the gas stations that are owned by the Arab man or the Ishmaelites and the Elamites. You got all these clothing stores, or no, let me retract that. All these supermarkets like Walmart, Winn-Dixie, Publix, that are owned by Edomites, right? And you'll have a little sprinkle of us that own a couple businesses, a couple grocery stores, a couple this and that, our so-called northern tribes as well, right? But if another pandemic happened or anything like that, we get shut down. We don't have that financial help, right? Here's a statistic from Lindio, right? Hispanic and black business owners are more likely to be denied support, right? We're constantly denied. Look at the percentages of us being denied support. The so-called Hispanic, 51%. The so-called black man, 47%. But the Asian and the white, their percentages are a lot lower, right? And then for us to obtain approvals, our percentages are lower as well. Meaning partially approved, right? This is part of the curses, my brothers and sisters. All you so-called black, Latino, Native American, some of the Indians need to wake up and repent and come back to the law, statutes, and commandments so we can obtain these blessings, so we can obtain the gift of the commandments, right? It's not a coincidence that the so-called black and Hispanic workers are more likely to be underemployed, right? A share of the labor force that is underemployed, either unemployed, working part-time, but would like to work more, or recently gave up job seeking, but would like to work. The majority of the so-called black and Hispanics are all underemployed. And what's today? Today, the so-called white man tell you Happy Labor Day. Happy Labor Day for what? For minimum wage? The so-called black man, Hispanic man can have the same credentials as the so-called white man and still get paid less. As part of the curses, my brothers and sisters. Here are some statistics. This is during the pandemic, right? During the pandemic is really how we know when times get rough, who really has that support. And the ones that always get left in the dust is the so-called black and Hispanics, right? Let's move on. Verse 18. Cursed shall be the fruit of thy body and the fruit of thy land, the increase of thy kind, and the flocks of thy sheep. What does that mean? What's the fruit of our body? What's the fruit of our land, right? Our resources, right? Our children, the fruit of thy body shall be cursed, right? You know, the Most High has mercy and grace upon us that we still are fruitful, right? In this captivity, right? Because the amount of so-called black, Latino, Native American, some of the Indians that descend from Negro and Indian descent here in this world, we still the majority, right? But we're not like the sand of the sea. We're not like the stars of heaven, right? Because we're cursed, right? How is the fruit of our body cursed? By Planned Parenthood, right? The ability, the option to abort your children is a curse. Salaki. Salaki. The option that this wicked kingdom gives you to abort. Salaki, I'm about to sneeze again. Planned Parenthood is wicked as hell. This is how we curse. This is how we're cursed regarding the fruit of thy body, right? Here's a statistic, right? The abortion rates continue to vary by race. So, Lucie, let me make sure. Am I sharing my screen? Yes. Okay. The abortion rates continue to vary by race and ethnicity. Lack of access to health insurance and health care plays a role, right? So when you look at this graph, Black, non-Hispanic, and Hispanic are on top of this graph, right? We're on top of the abortion rates. Why? Because we're a cursed nation, right? This is not to say that the other nations don't abort, but when you look at the majority of the people that that abort their children is the so-called Blacks and Latinos, right? It's the so-called Black and Latinos. The stats say it. We have access. Our sisters have access to something called Plan B, right? The abortion pill. You got birth control pills. These are things that they use to destroy the fruit of thy body. Why? Because they want us to not reproduce. They don't want us to continue building the nation. No matter how many things they create, they can't stop that because we are the chosen people. We are holy people, right? We are, let me retract that. You're only a holy people when you keep the law, statutes, and commandments, but we are the chosen, right? We are God's children, so the Most High has mercy and grace upon us, right? No matter how many things this society, this world comes up to prevent us from reproducing or building up a nation, they can't stop us. But this is the curses. This is a part of the curses. This is how we curse the fruit of our body, right? You know, they keep pushing these abortion laws. Some people are against it, some people are for it. You know, we have another movement here that creates a curse in regards to the fruit of thy body, right? You know, the alphabet crew, right? And they constantly push this on our young generation. Why? To prevent from us to reproduce, right? They take out the history of slavery, the history of the so-called Black Latinos, right? And they put this history in the schools now. Brainwashing our children to make a decision when they don't even know, they're not even fully aware what their body can do yet. This is how we're cursed, my brothers and sisters, right? Let's move on. It says, cursed shall be the fruit of thy body and the fruit of thy land. How is the fruit of thy land cursed? We don't have any food resources. In the majority of our poor neighborhoods, we are living in food deserts, right? This is just a picture to describe that, right? You know, a lot of the foods that we have access to is unhealthy, right? GMO, right? All the chemicals they put on it, right? That's why it's always recommended that you pray over your food, Israel, right? But this is part of the curses, right? They give us access to EBT, right? And our people get happy. Yeah, I got EBT, yeah. But EBT, you're allowed to use EBT at the places where the food sucks. Walmart, right? Winn-Dixie, right? Burger King, McDonald's, right? Why can't you use your EBT card at Trader Joe's or at Whole Foods, right? Or at these produce markets, right? Why can't you use that? They don't want you to. They don't want you to know that. They don't want you to obtain that food, right? Here we have this is just like I guess the cover of an article. I didn't pull up the article, but right, supersizing urban America: how inner cities got fast food with government help. Like I put on the first slide, right? This is Burger King here with a sign saying they accept EBT. So if these fast food chains accept EBT, what do you think is going to happen? We're going to continue to feed our children, right? These burgers, right? These Big Macs, McDoubles, chicken nuggets, right? We don't even know what's in this food, right? All these fast food chains is Burger King, McDonald's, Wendy's. Oh, they accept EBT. So now I can always get my children what they want, right? Because it's government aid, right? But it's not the food that our bodies need. Understand that, Israel. Here we have a statistic, right? Of our people that live in the United States that don't have no cars, right? That there's no supermarket within a mile from their residence, from where they live, right? What does that mean? So let's say you live in Florida, right? You have no car, whatever. For you to get to a supermarket or somewhere where they have healthy food, you would have to walk more than a mile to get there. You think our people are going to walk that mile? But you can literally walk a couple 10 minutes around the corner and you're going to have a McDonald's right there, a Burger King right there, right? What the article reads: a report released on Tuesday finds that junk food advertising continues to disproportionately target Black and Hispanic youth, contributing to health disparities. This is how the Most High has cursed the fruit of our land, right? The darker areas on the map are the areas that we have no supermarkets within or no supermarket store within a mile, right? Let's move on. Cursed shall thou be when thou comest in, and cursed shall thou be when thou goest out, right? So the blessing was the opposite of this, right? Anywhere we go, it will be blessed, right? But now ask yourself, anywhere where the so-called Black, Latino, Hispanic, Native American, Seminole Indian that descend from Negro Indian descent, anywhere in the world that we live in, is it blessed? Is it really blessed? No, it's cursed. You see what's going on in Haiti right now, right? You see what's going on in Venezuela, right? You see what's going on in New York and LA, in London. You know, all them the Benjamites and Judites, our African American brothers and our West Indian brothers out there upon the roads, right? Trying to get them peas, selling drugs to their people, the violence, gang violence, prostitution. Anywhere we go, anywhere we live, we are a cursed nation. Look at this. This is a survey of Latinos that have a darker skin color saying their life experience is worse, right? So it says having a darker skin color hurts Latinos' ability to get ahead. Why? Because it's a curse. You know, we all come in different complexion. We all come in different color of skin, right? The so-called Black, Latino, Native American, some of the Indians that descend from Negro Indian descent, right? But there is discrimination. There's a higher discrimination on darker people because that's part of the curses, right? But if you look at it in a deeper sense, it's only happening to the so-called Black and Latinos, you know, the African Americans, Haitians, Jamaicans. Why it don't happen to those Africans that come from Sudan or Ghana or some of these other countries in Africa? Why aren't they experiencing this?